trainings and the pedagogical content, the development of the platform, the team that developed the platform with KNIPS, and trainers for trainers. So trainers for trainers were part of the scope of expertise mobilized for this project, because after being themselves beneficiaries of the training, they became later on experts doing and delivering the trainings for trainers. So within this configuration of different actors, we were concerned about the coordination, the coherence and harmonization between different understandings of each and every one around this table, as well as the deliverables and production of the project and the approach that we will be adopting. We had a coordination system, a consultation system that were implemented between different teams and stakeholders within the teams of experts. And because we cannot conceive any modules for trainings without consulting and consulting with the teams and the engineers of the trainings, we cannot digitalize or develop scenarios and scenario without consulting with the experts, implementing or making the project coherent. So coherence and consultation were the keywords within the configuration of these different stakeholders and actors. The outputs of the project, as already mentioned by Mr. Slessy and Mr. Lasri, we first of all had a first block of production of the project composed of or consisting in the elaboration of the referentials. We have a referential of skills, evaluation and trainings, waiting for another referentials for certification. That has been mentioned by Mr. Slessy, and we also have a map for the trainings that has highlighted a need to elaborate around 49 to be more precise, 4 modules for 4 different professions line. So this approach of engineering of the training has led to the elaboration of different modules. We have produced a certain number of modules, and some of these modules, or an important part of the modules, were digitalized, developed into scenarios, and published or put online. Deliverables of this first block of skills referentials is represented in this scheme that you can see in front of you. We have 16 referentials that had been developed within the framework of this project. The output of this engineering production of the modules has led to the development of more than 25 modules. 16 among the 25 were put online or published online and digitalized. The rest will be developed in the future. All these modules that were developed or to be developed were already put online within a platform with the help of KNIP and the teams from Mr. Fergook, who will be presented that. The implementation now of the training or the experimentation phase, since this training had an experimental level phase that was done in 3 different periods of times that could be adapted to the context. If my institute is called to adapt, to contextualize and evolve. But for the experimental phase that we have conducted, it was conducted in 3 phases. And the first phase was the organization of a workshop, preparation and implementing frameworks. It was organized face-to-face, hybrid, and online to explain to the beneficiaries the framework of the training as well as the implementation of the system. A workshop that has lasted for 2 or 3 days. The second phase was a remote training in which beneficiaries have benefited from the online training. It is an online training but with a thematic support from our thematic experts in charge of the development of the modules. We had also technical assistance that is being of great help to the to learn how to use the platform, knowing that not everyone masters the new technologies. There was a support from the teams of CNIPS supporting and helping the beneficiaries during the training. Then, on the third phase, we have organized a training, a workshop of 2 or 3 days. It was for sharing, evaluation, and regulating the modules that we called APER. And that was a workshop for the beneficiaries to sit for an evaluation, to obtain certificate and to share their experiences, expertise, and recommend some of the adjustments or changes to bring to the modules. Results. Concerning the results now, we have tested the training on different professions in 3 different modules for each. As you can see on the screen, training in engineering, training pedagogical engineering, and the training has reached 504 beneficiaries in the different regions. It's a qualitative result aligned with our experimental phase of the approach to test the level of satisfaction and the quality of the approach. The results that our colleagues from CNIPS extracted from the platform has shown a level of satisfaction increase beyond 75% for the 4 types of beneficiaries. In conclusion, I'd like to say that the project was conducted thanks to a strict collaboration and a solid engagement and commitment from all the different stakeholders, experts teams, technical teams. I would like to seize this opportunity in order to highlight the efforts of each and everyone. I was in charge of the evaluation of the project. I worked for 3 years on the project, and I can only testify and say that everyone was committed. All the stakeholders and actors were committed. So thanks to their commitment and effort, the project today had seen light. The development of an innovative design and training approach leading to co-constructed tools that were tested in the field, contributing to the appropriation of the approach that has facilitated the work of the teams at a large scale generalization of the project in the other territories of Morocco. The creation of a pool of resource people at the central and territorial level, in addition to anchoring IFMA institutes in 3 institutional frameworks, is favorable to its sustainability and development in the medium and long term. The project, despite these considerable achievements, several challenges remain to be addressed and shared, mentioned by probably my colleague Si Mohammed. Thank you very much.
Merci Samahad Bouguidou pour cette Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for this brief history, but brief but detailed of the project.
qui se pose, et pendant la pause, j'en ai discuté.
We will be talking about the challenges, and during the break, I discussed it with Mrs. Mrini, my colleague from the Higher Council. The thing is, every time we have beautiful projects, beautiful initiatives in paper, but when we try to implement them, and because of the scale of the project, we're facing so many challenges in the implementation phase, and we are not as efficient as we were during the design phase. And we get results that are not always satisfying. And the idea, the challenge is the approach. This is a new approach. We are changing our methodology of work, and now we need to open this to all resources. So everyone can train, and we need to know how to validate. Now for a transition, I give that was for the transition. And now I give the floor to Mr. Mohammed. If you can give us an idea on what the deliverables were. Very well, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you to the Higher Council for Education, Training and Scientific Research, to ANELCA, to the UNESCO office. Thank you to all for organizing this meeting, and I hope this is the first of many meetings. I will share with you some ideas, but these are ideas that are based on my small experience. I had the honor to take part of this project since the start of the implementation phase. Not during the design phase, but during the implementation phase, I have seen all the challenges, and I have also seen all the strategic features of the project. I will try to structure my presentation so we will get in the methodological approach and signal the three components that are necessary and that needs to be reviewed to make IFMA the institute that has all the competencies to help eradicate illiteracy, and I will share with you what are the important components to make it sustainable, and then I will talk about the different challenges to be overcome. I will go back to the initial state, which is the demography that shows the real challenge. So if we look at the population, there is a baseline illiteracy that is really high. However, another challenge is the continuous growth of the existing pool. So at the bottom of the scale, there are diverse profiles. There are some illiterate who can't read and can't write. We have youth and who drop out from school, but we also have uh, adults and youth who went to school but who cannot today be literate. So the challenges in all actions for literacy, and this is global, we have to answer three requirements. The supply to provide literacy should let the beneficiary have the necessary competencies. This is the basis. If we don't have it, and Mr. Kharmouz earlier said it, they said that it is time that we overcome the basic meaning of illiteracy. We shouldn't overcome it. We should not only overcome it, we should be successful at doing it and even bring more to the table. So there are some people who could not learn the basic skills, so we have to be successful at what we do, and we have to add something. We need to bring something additional to the table. These programs should allow the beneficiaries to have the necessary competencies and develop all the skills that they need to keep learning throughout life. So this is the pedagogical objective for these literacy programs. And in the Moroccan context, in order to answer these three requirements, we have to overcome three challenges. The first challenge is scale up the capacity, because today, in terms of supply of capacity, is not sufficient. It's not sufficient to cover the existing pool of illiterate, but also the continuous flow that's being added to it. This is where our role is. And in order to overcome these two challenges, one of the leverages would be to make the illiteracy or literacy jobs more available. So the main leverage is to make the jobs for bringing literacy more professional, and the essential phase in order to do so is to structure those professions. So, to repeat, the strategic objective is to make those jobs more professional, and in order to do so, you have to structure the training they benefit from. And this is where IFMA comes to play a very important role. It is a hybrid mechanism that will structure the training for the different jobs, and this is only one phase that is only a leverage to improve capacity. So we have to put IFMA in the global framework for training. So IFMA has two innovations in it. First, it has a holistic vision on the different professions. There are 4 of them, and they were mentioned by my colleagues. In addition to that, in the conception or in the design, we include distance learning as the main training mode. And here I'm talking about training the trainers. We should not confuse this with the beneficiaries. IFMA is here to train the trainers, and that will be done virtually. Then there are programs that are for the beneficiary, which are different. So to give you an idea, to clarify things, the Ministry of National Education is setting up the right example. We have the ministry, then we have the regional directors, ARAF, that manage what's happening in the classroom. Then we have the CERMEF. The CERMEF are institutes that train future professors. And IFMA is the equivalent of CERMEF for literacy. Its objective is to work that on making those professionals have the right competencies. Here I would like to go back to what my colleague Mr. Slessy said earlier and what Mr. Bugino said as well. IFMA is a project in the Moroccan, African and Arab world context. It is an innovative project, and I'll explain to you later why. And the wealth of the team that's mobilized and their commitment, we'll talk about that. Mr. Baydada and his colleagues discussed this issue many times, and during a lot of time we learned the approach and the philosophy of Mr. Slessy, saying let's start with the labor market. Let's start by developing referential of competencies for the learning achievements. So in the development approach, there are two complementary phases. We have to design the content, and we also have to manage the training. So we worked on those two points only. And many principles that we used in our work, the IFMA, is an approach that will evolve. We have to modelize it to allow for it to grow. We have to think in an integrated way. We have to think about the content, but also about the how to implement. It has to be based on an innovative pedagogical approach, and it has to be prescribed. I will talk about that more into more details. Another principle, this should be integrated in a larger approach. The objective is not to provide this training supply, but to use it to go further and to have an integrated literacy sector for adult education. And this has to be fully a part of the education and training system. And here I would like to commend my colleagues, my friends, who are the experts who worked on this point, because we always had a concern how to set the right conditions so the local actors take ownership. So this is a project that is 100% made in Morocco by Moroccan experts. So it is 100% Moroccan, and this is something we are really proud of. So how to design this pedagogical project? So we start with the main concept, which is learning achievements. And here I would like to speak under the control of Mr. Slessy. It took us a long time to understand, but we finally understood and took ownership of the concept. It is a good, strong concept. So the learning achievement is what the learners say, understand, and is able to do at the end of the learning process. And it is described by knowing how, and the personal behavior. So this is my favorite graph. It's not drawn well, but it is very important. This shows you the whole value chain of the approach for the training design and for the content. So you have three blocks. The first one is designing the three referentials. In the middle, you have the learning achievement right in the center. So that allows for an organic connection between all three referentials. And this is prescribed. It will then become learning achievements that are confirmed, and then there will be objects of assessment, evaluation, and certification. The second block is about designing the training card, and finally developing the different courses, whether it is for the virtual version or for the in-class version, in-person version. Pardon.
Ça marche ici ou là? Je dois le faire ici. Bon, c'est pas grave.
So the main comment is that the learning achievements is something we find when designing the referential, and we find the same learning achievements in the map, in the training map, and we find the same learning achievements in the different courses or modules. So if I change something in the Moodle, or so if the learning achievements are not well, I can make the change in the referential. So we did work going back and forth. We started with the referential, then we committed a team to design the curriculum for the in-class courses and also for the virtual courses, and we kept going back and forth to find the right balance for this training supply. So these are two important components of this approach. This is what's very important for this competency referential. So we have the labor market, and we then look at the labor market based on the existing documentation and existing professions and technicians. Now, to analyze that specific profession. So there are 4 professions, 4 jobs that are covered, and we know that there will be many more in the future, and some of them may disappear. So if we want to analyze them, we need to do the necessary analysis, have a canvas, and when doing so, we decided whenever we want to structure a profession, it has to be done through phases: prepare, act, develop. And for each one, there are 2 main activities. And for each professional activity, there are 2 professional sub-activities. And it is for these sub-activities that we identify the learning achievements that are prescribed. And each learning achievement
Savoir, savoir-faire et savoir-être.
for each learning achievement, we need to know the know-how and know how to do. So for each profession, you need to have 6 professional competencies. Now we have a graph that shows how we can structure profession. So you have profession that's divided into 2 activities. Its activity are many sub-activities, and within each sub-activity we do have the prescribed learning achievements, and this leads to the professional competencies. That was for the employment part. Now we have the same graph from the employment point of view. So here we start with the profession, the professional activities, the sub-activities, and the learning achievements, and that leads to professional competencies for each activity, which leads to developing a referential. And in order to simplify more, we could move directly to the evaluation referential. But to make work easier for us, professional of the education, we look at the point of view from the training side. So we have a learning path to be in order for it to be certified, and then we have training courses, and for each learning there is a training module, and for each one of them there will be a certificate. Here we're talking about learning and about competency threshold. When we talked about employment, we were talking about professional competencies, and here we're talking about competency threshold.
Qui regroupe les deux, qui permet.
And the last referential that brings them together is that we will be doing the assessment of the learning achievements, the fruit of this training, through competency thresholds, and there is an organic link between those competency thresholds and the professional competency, because there is a matrix that links between the competencies and the training. So the assessment or evaluation is done at 2 levels. So the evaluation, which is that we're used to do,
Contenu de la formation, et ça, c'est la formation.
the first assessment is to validate the content, but there is a second level, is the validation of the learning achievement. So there is the training mode and there is the learning achievement, and for each course there is a list of learning achievements to be achieved. It's like graduating from high school, the baccalaureate. Or it's like driving license. You need to have certain competencies to be certified. And here we're talking about validating the learning achievement. And if we're able to pass all those courses, then we get certified, and this certification is another pillar of IFMA that needs to be developed. So here we put the link between the two. And when can we say that a person has the right competencies to work as a person who will provide literacy? It's once they validate all competencies that are needed, and all this refers to the competencies that are in the training referential. So this shows that there is an organic link at the referential level. This presentation will be available and shared with all the audience and with my colleagues and the experts. I will be happy to share it. And another innovation in this approach is that we're using an initial training approach. If there is a young person who would like to support others, we need to know what are all the courses that they need to validate. Here we have a list of modules that are linked to learning achievements. So this is very important, and Mr. Baidana said it earlier. We have already reached 55 modules, 18 and 13. So this is growing quickly. And now, from this map or mapping of the modules, we need to start designing the content. So we're thinking about having generic module, and it can be structured into 3 training units that will each be divided into 3 units, and for each unit there will be 3 activities. There will be the assessment, practice, and validation. So these are the people from digitalization. So when we worked with the team of Mr. Fargouk and Mr. Hosni, we were able to come up with these results because we wanted to move from an in-person course to a digital or virtual course. They told us how to do it, and that allows to save a lot of time. So to conclude, these are the 3 resources necessary for the development of IFMA. So we have to supply the training. The model is here, the approach is here. So what we need now is the maintenance, the development of the content, and development of evaluation tools. So upstream of and before supplying the training, we need to identify what's needed in the labor market, and downstream we need to have certification approach that is integrated. So B and C, I didn't write C, but it's to the right. These are things we have to work on. And for A, we have to consolidate and develop. And then we see what Mr. Slessy has drawn for us, and this summarizes everything. upstream, we have a monitoring system to update the learning systems continuously. Downstream, we do have the assessment and evaluation and certification, and this is in line and with the organic law and the approach used by IFMA is translation of or interpretation of the approach used in the organic law. I believe that IFMA has to be seen as a structuring approach, and the Minister of National Education took a lot of time to establish the SERMAF, and it's still being improved. And for the agency, it's the same thing. IFMA is a baby that's learning to crawl, and we have to foster it so it grows correctly. So, for this lifelong, for the lifelong learning, what needs to be done for IFMA? So first, in order to make it sustainable, we have to take ownership of it. So the approach has to be in line with the organic law of the Ministry of Education. Then there is a model that needs to be developed and can be used in other sectors of education. We have also trained a pool of national experts that are
Participer aux autres fonctions de ressourcement. Et ensuite, je pense que nous avons
and we have tried to align IFMA with by developing partnerships with CUNIP and its two bodies and some of the universities. And some recommendations, because these are important, but Morocco and the agency needs to start already consolidating what was achieved by developing more modules and then start training the FF and MF. Define the governance approach to be used, start doing surveys on the labor market, and do advocacy in order to raise the financial resources, but also to bring the necessary experts for its growth. And thank you.
Merci Stéphane Boulogne pour cet éclairage détaillé.
Thank you for these clarifications. We needed to have details about the process. I know that this is a process which lasted 2.5 years, and you had to summarize it in about 20 minutes. We will be able to discuss it further. I would like to give now the floor to Mrs. Medina Buldi, specialty of this program, senior program of the Institute in UNESCO for the lifelong learning. Thank you for staying with us, Mrs. Bulli. The floor is yours. Hello, can you hear me? Yes, very well. I wanted to ask whether I can share my screen. Yes, indeed. Our technician could take care of that. The magician of digital transition.
Voilà, c'est bien, c'est fait. Vous avez votre...
Here is your presentation. The floor is yours, Ms. Bodi. Thank you very much. I would like first of all to thank you again and thank the organizers for inviting me to take part in this important seminar. Regarding now my presentation about the non-physical training institute, that would through the presentation I would share an international vision. We were able to, at the UNESCO Institute for the Lifelong Learning, were able to work and the implementation of the experiment or steering project in 2 pilot regions. The UNESCO Institute had developed a report that is being finalized at the moment. Supporting this project has allowed us to say that IFMA is a potential transformer in the development of literacy and lifelong learning of adults in particular, but also at the level of education globally. Because if we refer to each country's context or continental, African, and international contexts, we can observe that there is an absence of referentials for professions and qualifications. So at this level, there is no norm for competencies and trainings that allow the professions that you have highlighted, training trainees, training adults, management of the lifelong learning project. So there is no norm within this framework related to this profession. We have also observed at international level that there is an absence of or a lack of a quality certification of the online trainings. So what we can say in this regard is that IFMA constitutes the first project at the level of Africa or in the Arab level that recognize the professions of literacy globally, but also take into account an important component, which is the online training. This component, as mentioned, it is important in the current context that is aligned with the acceleration of using new technologies in communication and development, as well as the management of crisis. So we have followed the follow-up of this experimental phase, and we can say, and it was reiterated, and we all agree that the approach of IFMA is an innovative and important approach. It is very important to highlight that IFMA's approach is based on the labor market needs, and it is also based on a coherent approach that takes into account the acquisitions of learnings and the links between modules and curricula. What we have appreciated very much is the approach of this related to to professions. This modelization or module-based approach allows a comparison between professions. We have some of the results that we can find at the level of IFMA's institute, and we will highlight them. We have also observed and noticed this a 3-step implementation system. First of all, everything that is related to the phase of initiation in order to raise awareness about the professions, as well as distance training learned, is an innovation in itself that should be highlighted for all the other professions. If we talk about the technical aspect and strategic aspects, that That is the fact that this phase or step of this project, and we repeated that in this meeting, that we all agree that there is an effort developed at a national level. The expertise on a national level is a multidisciplinary approach. We worked with different stakeholders such as the Ministry of Education, the National Agency to Counter Illiteracy, and at the territorial level, who are therefore capable of continuing the implementation of the process. So this pool of experts that was developed at a national level is important, and we need to capitalize on the expertise to the development of the project in general. As highlighted by our director, ULA, but also UNESCO, generally speaking, are available in order to share their expertise. For example, within UAL, we have a range of tools and kit of tools for certification. And I've also heard many interventions about family or parent literacy. We have, based on these tools, and in addition to other tools, we can enrich approaches and finalize it. So for us, the phase of experiment is a first step towards the professionalization of the profession, and we would like to institutionalize that so that we can integrate the trainings in the systems of national education. Therefore, this approach of professional trainings and integrating that in the national education discourse that was also highlighted by colleagues previously, we need to capitalize on the mechanisms of certification and develop perspective of market work governance is also an important element to solidify the action within IFMA. The most important question is that we need to see IFMA not as a process that will end tomorrow, but it is a process that will take time, and therefore, and since it is an innovative process and tackle the literacy and illiteracy and tackle also digital and professionalization, we need to apprehend IFMA on the long term, medium and long term. To conclude with, we fully agree and reiterate that IFMA is a good practice and best practice which contribute to the recommendations of the Marrakesh Action Framework, the UNESCO Literacy Strategy, and the GL Strategy, and by ricochet contribute to the achievement of sustainable development. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Ms. Medina Bouli, for your intervention that comes build up on this work, and we are very glad for your testimony and for sharing your perspectives with us and IFMA. This panel comes to an end, but we'll open the floor for a few questions since we have a second panel that should follow up. I'll take a question or two or three questions so that we don't take much from the panel session. Ma'am, please.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Slessy. And I'd like to thank all my colleagues, Mr. Brigido, Mr. Bouglom, for your presentations, as well as Miss Bouli. I am Kautar El-Omari, professor at the Faculty of Education Sciences in the University Mohammed V. I've seen the engineering of training behind IFMA, and I contributed upstream in the achievement of the pedagogical content of some of the modules. My intervention is not questions, but related to the development, and I would like to share a testimony with you. to give this project through a scientific lecture or scientific explanation what IFMA engineering for training is. This IFMA is an exceptional model in Morocco, and I'm saying that because I have some expertise in information engineering development. I would like to mention some of the elements that weren't highlighted in the presentation, especially the evaluation systems before starting the training. So it is the first that I see in information engineering this aspect. The requirements that we have seen in the evaluation before actually implementing the training is a strong element of the system. Competence-based approach in different areas is a first in the information engineering that is done correctly, and the steps you have mentioned, the progression of these skills into micro competencies are happening thanks to a professional andragogy that was achieved in order to, and I would like to highlight that the competencies-based approach is respected. I would like to say that I'm still waiting for the integration of this approach in the pedagogical level. Fragmentation is important to decompose the professions, but later on it will be a challenge. There is an internship, but please think about integrating a profession on the full professional aspect of the four professions. Open a bracket, working on 4 professions are not easy. I would like to add to this system a integrating model, for example, the portfolio of the beneficiary and the professional plan of each beneficiary would give a sense to what we have developed in terms of the repartition of competencies. In addition to that, I would like to say that the challenges today, or add to the challenges that have already been mentioned by some of my colleagues, but deploying and scaling up the office
C'est ce qu'il faut faire. Donc, pensez à
is what's to be done. Think about other professions. It is doable, it is relevant. I'm thinking about, for example, training adults in healthcare professions, for example. This is feasible. We're trying to educate them on hygiene and prevention, but let's think about a training that would give a profession to the adults in the healthcare sector. On the qualitative level, and within this long process, we need to construct a pedagogical model, build a pedagogical model of IFMA. IFMA's pedagogical model was already developed and built through the content, the modules, the curricula, but parallelly speaking, the model should integrate a vision related to the choice. Are we going to adopt a project, a simulation, a role play as a method or a technique of teaching? What are the most appropriate teaching method on the professions we are working on? So there are lots of things to say about this very big project, but I would like to congratulate you honestly for all the effort you have deployed to reach your objectives. Of course, you are still developing more objectives. You are talking about certification, referential studies. I've really very much appreciated the baseline study that you want to do in order to fix amongst the indicators that already exist the objectives and the thresholds of the future. And through my very humble experience, I'd like to say that opening on other sector would be an added value. The Faculty of Education, Sciences of Education have a bachelor degree in training. We also and engineering. We have also a master's in adult teaching and a master's degree on education focused on the evaluation, follow-up, and certification. Mr. Bugido, who touches to all these fields, is present with us, so I wish you good luck. Thank you for your testimony, and we can obviously apply that to the education professions. I'd like to give the floor now to Mr. Fuad, since this is a subject matter that is of high importance as a president of the commission. Thank you, Mrs. Nessie. Thanks to each and every one of you. If I may, the model that was presented today was a pedagogical model for trainers in the informal education and illiteracy. I was raising a question since this morning. Can we elaborate a pedagogical model for the training without taking into account the economic model in which the literacy would happen? Is there a coherence between this training model that is being implemented and the economic model of literacy in Morocco? And if I may, to tackle in depth this question, listening to Mr. Khabush earlier, he talked about 18,000 trainers who are being trained and who are part of the personnel of the different organizations. One of the concern of IFMA should be how to manage this important number of personnel, certify them. Maybe they are in a very delicate situation and they only need a certificate to develop their career plans. Regarding this perspective, I would like to know whether in the 2 pilot regions that you have chosen, have you done a need analysis in terms of capacity and skills development and actors of the field to say that among the 50 or 60 modules that you have developed, what are going to be the most relevant modules for the professionals to obtain their certification? The on-field or in-field expertise would develop their skills, but there are some other skills that cannot be acquired unless they're back to classrooms, online or face-to-face trainings or classes. Have you done a filtering of these modules that are going to be used for the certification? And within the certification program itself, have you an idea about the different levels of certification, especially when we're talking about literacy? And I know that literacy will still be a subject for the upcoming years. Mr. has mentioned earlier that we still need 50 years to eradicate illiteracy in Morocco, and even if we accelerate the approach, we'll still need a few years to eradicate it completely. So that were my 2 questions, and thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fuad, for your questions. Very interesting indeed. We have answers for you, but please, the floor is yours. Go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Slassi. I would like, first of all, to thank Mr. Bougma and Mr. Bukibu and Smalina Bully for the presentations, which were very enlightening and gave us a holistic idea about IFMA and all the learnings or lesson learned from IFMA. IFMA's project has a strategic objective that will be behind the reform of the sector. The 2 interventions of earlier corroborates this idea, the transition from a pilot phase to a more consolidated phase that is more implemented and anchored in the realities of the field. All these elements should be taken into account and take some of the suggestions into account. If I may, Mr. Bugram, I would like to value the contribution of ESMER RF, which participated to this dynamic through their expertise in terms of engineering, in education curricular development, but based on the differentials of evaluation. They have participated in depth in certification of literacy trainers and trainers of the literacy trainers. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, when we talk about the hybrid system, did you think about a very good version of the hybrid training and conciliate the online training with in-person training, face-to-face, and a coaching? It is in an in vitro training, and it would be one of the most important added value of MAS project and its openness toward the realities and different territories of Morocco. When I see the FF, the trainers of the literacy trainer, there is an analogy between this system of the moderator of the literacy and the trainer of the trainer for literacy. That latter should have an added value in terms of support, scientific research, in order to improve the quality of trainings in different regions. It is actually, and when I said a support, we need, and amongst the best practices, we need to implement a professional community for the professions of literacy, and it is an important step to increase the quality of the trainings. I'm sorry, that would be my last intervention. We also need to build digital capacities. Sometimes when we see the resources we have and they're lacking digital skills, this could be probably a cause for resistance for the training. And the third point to take into account is adaptation to the limits of the IT systems. Everything that is around the IT system, connectivity, for example, we need to find other alternatives and solutions in order to implement the acquisitions of IFMA. Thank you very much. Thank you for your intervention. That is very enlightening and tackle different subject matters. We'll stop at this point because there is another panel that should start in a while. Thank you very much for this interaction. What we have started is the first pillar of IFMA. The project on which we have worked at the beginning is the project of the implementation of IFMA. The basis is solid, and I start answering questions, and I give the floor to, or answer Mr. Fouad's question at the end. SNRF has played an important or extremely important role during the exchanges on the concepts, but also during the implementation phase. So with colleagues from CRMF, we have built real communities for professional practices. and with colleagues from the agency as well as the technical committee behind the agency, composed of around 10 of the colleagues from the agency, as well as the UNESCO expert. This is the component of a real professional community. Well, actually, the FF dimension or FF trainings, we need a research dimension within it, because what I want to say is that what we've done was beta version of the program, and within a year we need to just review, but we have the mechanisms to adjust. If you could precise what FF means. Training trainers, TOT. There is 3 professions, the trainers that we can see on the field in organizations, training trainers, TOTs. There are colleagues from CMRF who are mobilized at part-time or as an expert, and then we have a manager of training, which is a new profession. So out of the 4 professions, 3 are already operational, and within the framework of the profession of trainers for trainers, we need a research aspect for that. We'll select a minority that later will become FFFs, trainers for trainers of trainers. The experts of UNESCO have done this so far, but later on we need to choose people from within the territory to have that component for certification. For needs analysis, Mr. Fuad, and what I can answer, what I can say about a question about the impacts earlier. Experiments on the field have shown that there is a need for trainings. There is a willingness to be part of the training. We have identified the need, and within people there is a willingness to be part of the training. What we have suggested to the trainers for literacy and the managers, andragogy and management techniques were suggested. We haven't done a needs analysis yet. It was an exchange, and we've done a sampling that is not representative, and we have discerned a need. One of the observations we made is that when we have developed this training as an initial training, it will be a continuous training during the implementation of the training. We need to do that, and in order to do that we need a orientation kind of system that will help every person see their skills and what they can certify, and what are the skills that they need, and orient them toward the platform. That was also a component that was to be done in the platform. Certification, we have no level of certification at the moment. We have a validation of content, but there is no certification project going on. It's a field that we couldn't start yet. We need to do that because uncertified training has no value on the market, labor market. So people won't come to study or do a training if it has no value in the labor market. So we need to have, alongside a system to motivate people to come for the training, and that's the certification, but also a system of qualification to have access. And that's what Mrs. Mazzoni has talked about earlier, because people do not have the digital skills, do not have internet, do not have a computer or laptop. These are the logistic conditions to have access to the training, and this takes money, or it requires money, and it should be part of the economic model of IFMA. Thank you very much. Mr. Mohammed, would you like to say something? I'd like first of all to thank all the speakers for their interventions and questions. Mrs. Kota, my colleague, Shafiqi, have raised important questions that are that we have already discussed from an angle or another. Mr. Shafiqi has talked about the situation of the trainers for literacy. I think that in order to change their situation, it goes through the training, not training as we see it today, or the increase in their salaries as mentioned earlier by Mr. Director General of ANCA, National Agency for Literacy, or for Country Illiteracy. It is a process, an ongoing process that is being built in a progressive way. So if we reach, or if we can increase their salaries, it is also very important, but we need also to tackle different other angles and dimensions. For example, a legal recognition of their, or a reconnaissance of their profession, and being able to be part of the economic development of the country, recognized on a legal basis by the government. That's what I wanted to conclude with as a reaction or a feedback or remark to all of your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you for your clarifications. I'd like to answer different matters, especially, or different questions, especially the pedagogical model that is, or translated in the framework law. So we only duplicated or explicitly explained that model in a professional way. So the model exists already. It's an institutional acquisitions that we have, and in which we want to build this training to have an integrated lifelong learning system that requires an engineer for education to reach a certification phase, so we can apply that on every profession, no matter what the profession is, whether we are talking about a professional, artistic, sports, or a cultural sector. We can duplicate the model, and there is an effort that is being done at the level of the High Council for Education and Trainings and Scientific Research. Today, in the publication of the report on the new school, there is an ad hoc commission that should be working on that. We, within or myself as a president of the governance committee, are working on a report of a new school, and we will explain explicitly all these models that today become explicit. A legal text cannot explain the pedagogical engineering behind the model. Now, regarding your intervention, the intervention of Mr. Fuad, that I thank very much, it has different levels. If we wanted to adapt all the process of the pedagogical engineering, we need to start from the acquisitions of learnings that are already prescribed and we have already identified, and they are the translation of the professional acquisitions, cultural, sports and artistic. When we talk about professions, we rather exclude all the other types of activities. That's why I want to highlight them every time. And at that moment, we work on the directives of RVA of UNESCO, the recognition, the validation, and the accreditation that leads us directly to accreditation or certification. So we recognize the acquisitions and recognize them at a legal level, giving them a value amongst the communities to see at what level the certification is. in Morocco we have 8 level, reaching higher education and PhD later. The norms of education that were defined in 2013 in a referential document could be a basis of a comparative a comparison between the certificate and the levels of education. Then we can understand or how to deliver the certification. It's the validation accreditation phase. It's a process that identifies the referential of the validation. So we reach the end and then we go backwards. Doing that, you can open the door for all the candidates to this certificates, whether they have studied in a formal framework or outside the formal framework thanks to vocational trainings, or because they attended and studied that on internet, for example, and learned. So actually the ones on the field in the literacy sector are the ones who are doing certification and have this delicate situation. There are people that are not recognized and with no certificate, but they're doing the job, so we need to recognize them, we need to certify them, and since we will have a referential of evaluation, we can use this referential to do a summary of the skills and competencies that we have. We can inform them about the range of the competencies that they need, and they come sit for this evaluation. It could be also a digitalized evaluation, because there are different levels of learnings, and we can do tests online, and I can do their evaluation online. So based on that and from that, it is important to say that we need to valorize what has been learned. There is also an aspect that is very important in certification. We can imagine blocks of skills that allow any individual to start working with, for example, a model in pedagogy or animation, and another module in group management, so that person can already start working and training on a block of activities and getting recognized and work with different people. And this is where the financial or economic model is interesting. So the person can advocate for their block of expertise or skills and have a salary that they can negotiate, because there are organizations that are very well organized and have a legal basis to defend their position. So this is globally speaking, a range of skills that is related to certification, in order to have micro certification that could be acquired globally. So this is a system that takes us from the end backward to the training, to the formal training whenever necessary. So I think I'll stop at this point, but we're still here. If you have any other questions or exchange, we can do that later at the end of the seminar. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Mohammed, but before that I'd like to thank the experts that were mobilized by UNESCO, the team, Mr. Mohammed Baydada, Madame Mizan, Abdel Farabi, Abdel Biharraq, Mohammed Boulilousi, Mohammed Boghroum, Mr. Abdel Fargoug, and we would like to thank everyone for their contribution. Thank you. Thank you to the assistants, and
I would just like to make a comment on what Mrs. Kautara told us. There is an important dimension. We can see this as a project for action, and there are a lot of elements that we can all learn from This is a call for universities to support this important project. Thank you to all of you. And now we move to the second workshop.
Rebonjour, je remercie Sislasi.
Hello again, and I would like to thank Mr. Slessy as well as the panelists of the first workshop who shared with us the conceptual approach of IFMA. And I would like to invite panel number 2, Mr. Mazouni, Director of the National Center for Pedagogical and Research and Innovation, Mr. Furkul is charge of the distance learning from the center, and Mr. Mohammed in charge of literacy for the region of Rabasari Kinitra. Is Mrs. Maria online? And I would also like to wish welcome to Mrs. Mary, a program specialist from UNESCO, the section of youth, who joined us online. In addition to the ISMA content, the conceptual approach that we talked about during panel 2. And now we move to the second main mandate of IFMA, which is distant learning. So we will start by setting the context on what is distant learning for literacy. This will be done by Mr. Khalid Ftah, and then we'll talk about the distant learning platform that will be presented by Mr. Fergug and Mr. Mazouni. After that, we will talk about the different experiences that were successful at the international level. Now we give the floor to Mr. Khalid Ftah. The floor is yours.
Donc, merci beaucoup.
So, thank you, Mrs. Tifitri. Hello to all of you. It is a real pleasure to share with you the vision of the National Agency to Combat Illiteracy and the importance of using the technology for the literacy professions. Then Mr. Abdul Taif will give you the technical details on the platform. On my side, I will just give you the vision and tell you why we chose using technology and for training the 4 professions we had mentioned before. In this presentation, I will talk about 3 different points. First, what is the context that encourages the use of virtual learning for training? After that, we will talk about the strong potential of the IFMA platform. And I will conclude by introducing the perspectives of this platform for the different jobs of literacy. So the national agency has adopted this technology. It's not because it is luxury, but it is needed in order to combat illiteracy and to be in line with the national strategy. more specifically to be in line with the strategic choice number 8 by developing a digital offer. On another side, the development of technology by this agency was not something simple to do, but it is part of the roadmap 2023 2027, more specifically project number 11. So we talked about integration of technology in training by adding mobile applications such as Alpha Noor, Alpha Tshil, Alpha Falah, Alpha Bhar, and many other digital tools. And the agency uses technology to combat illiteracy through its platform, IFMA. The second point, why do we have to use this technology? And the director mentioned it earlier. Every year, the National Agency to Combat Illiteracy, with its partners, mobilizes more than 10,000 trainers and over 2,000 supervisors. So therefore, technology provides more flexibility. Every person can learn at its own pace based on their availability, and this platform is accessible. Each person can access the information any place at any time, and of course the training can offer so many things and can be adapted based on the preferences of each learner. Why does the agency promote the use of the technology? And this was mentioned many times this morning. It is a tool for life learning, and it completes the three other types of learning: formal, non-formal, and informal. And Mr. Abdeltef will talk to you about the details. So the design of this lifelong learning is very important for the agency because it allows to access training at any time for any age. What are the potentials of this platform without getting into the technical details? This platform is a tool for learning, for evaluation, and for exchange. Not for learning, as it was presented by Mr. Buhro. There are some MOOC or short videos or MOOC for learning. There is also access to the PDF versions of the modules, and of course there is always a tutorial that can help the learners to better understand this platform is also an evaluation tool. It allows to do the diagnosis, to do the evaluation by course or by unit, and that allows for final evaluation. So this platform is not only for learning but also for evaluation of the learning. It is also a tool to exchange, as it includes discussion, forum, and each person can introduce good practices. This is a very important component that is part of this concept for learning through life. And there is also the possibility to have a tutor for each module and its profession. So this is a holistic platform that allows for learning and evaluation, and it allows for lifelong learning. The potential of this platform, and I will not hold you too much. What are the different? What is the horizon for this platform? This platform is dynamic. Why is it dynamic? Because it can be updated constantly. Each module, each course can be updated at any time. We can add other professions, and we can integrate new training courses. If we look at the current case of the national agency, it's also working on parent education, migrants education, and literacy. It evolves. Why does it continuously evolve? Whether it is midterm or long term, this platform can become a tool for personalized learning. The training does not need to contain and to include all modules. However, it can focus on specific modules for the certification of the actors. So why not this platform be a tool for validation of the achievements, the certification and level of certification is important. So why not have this platform as a tool for validation? And also, if you want to learn on your own, you can validate your achievements through distant learning in this platform. And why not only use it for the literacy purpose, but at the long term for also education of adults, and that will strengthen the quality of the training for adults. This platform is not for training on specific topics, but it is to provide the pedagogical tools to work with adults. And IFMA is a technology innovation, an opportunity for Morocco to move forward in the field of lifelong learning and combating literacy. Thank you, Mr. Ftah, for this presentation that reminds us of the interest of using new technologies in the field of literacy and the use of this tool in order to take ownership of the culture of lifelong learning. And why not have this tool evolve in order to be able to certify the professionals? Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Nordin Mazouni and Monsieur Abdeltif Fargouk to show us, to explain to us their work. And I would like to thank the Ministry of School, Preschool and Sport, and thank everyone for the support that was provided while developing and establishing the IFMA. Mr. Mazzoni, the floor is yours.
جلسة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين السيد رئيس المجلس الأعلى للتربية والتكوين والبحث العلمي، السيدة ممثلة اليونسكو، السيدات والسادة أعضاء المجلس الأعلى للتربية والتكوين، السيد رئيس مجلس لجنة الحكامة بالمجلس ذاته، السيدات والسادة أطر الوكالة الوطنية لمحاربة الأمية. بداية أود أن أعبر عن سعادة.
At the outset, let me express my gratitude in this scientific seminar, and I would like to address my greetings to the President of the Council to empower the Center to participate for coming out with the recommendations to improve the institution. My participation is an introduction to my colleague about the technical aspect. For the center in eradicating illiteracy. Truly, the colleagues reiterated about the different components of the context. I will deal about it otherwise. Teaching online is improving either in the digital world or the digital resources, and to promote the resources and the infrastructure, especially with the issuing the report by the High Commission at the time of the corona, and the important recommendations that were issued in the crystallization of the strategies, either in the counter literacy. And also I need to remind, after issuing the protocol about the teaching online, of course the agency is policy is limited about the dimension related to the platform as well as the digital content and the process of teaching online. Colleagues in this seminar talked about the project, its diagnostic, being open for best practices, and hereby thank the UNESCO for seconding this expertise. There were two options. The recruiting an accredited company to establish a online platform, or based on the achievement that the ministry has gained at all levels. I reckon that the last option was accurate, straightforward, to the point. In addition to the acquisitions, there was a meeting of expertise, and all of that contributed to elevate the competence of the agency. And I see the opportunity to thank the agency and the UNESCO for having chosen the National Center to take part in this dynamic. And I promise you its continuity to strengthen these acquisitions after the pilot program, especially in the light of the jump that was realized in the roadmap and the promotion of the digital world and online teaching. Thank you. I recognize my colleague.
لزميلي أستاذ عبد اللطيف فرقوك.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais dans
Thank you very much. I will also move quickly. Anyways, what I want to share with you is the process used to put together this distance learning approach. So we went through a structured phases that are structured in time, and now there is a sentence that comes up to my mind, the sentence of Abraham Lincoln, who says, if I have 6 hours to cut a tree, I will take 5 of them to sharpen the axe. So the process of engineering was based on a participative approach. It was also based on an approach that allows for transferring competencies, and more specifically, we had a process with structured phases. So the first 3 phases, more specifically the emergence phase, then there was the feasibility study, because sometimes we can dream of achieving so many things, but we need to make sure that it is feasible. And especially for distant learning, we try to structure our order to scale it, to understand it, and to see whether or not it is feasible, to guarantee that it will be successful. The feasibility study was very important.
Il faut discuter à propos de la population cible.
For distant learning, we have to know the personality, the type of the target population. We have to identify the existing, analyze the existing in terms of content, in terms of readaptation of the content. We also need to think about the type of platform. So are we going to take a Promise platform or SAS platform or an open source platform? So there are different choices. And then when it comes to training, is it going to be distance training, or is it going to be a hybrid training? And even if it is hybrid, is it what level of hybrid is it? Is it half distance learning and half in-class learning. So we had so many discussions upstream with our partners to make the right educated, pedagogical and technological choices that are relevant, that are adapted, and we then moved to the design phase, and this design phase was really the core of what we have achieved. And the result of all this is a platform that has 4 profiles. As I said earlier, we had to choose the technology, the platform, the management system. There are so many choices of platforms. So UNESCO and the agency had to make the right choice on which to choose. And in order to avoid challenges that we had faced in our past experience, the objective was to make the best choice, which is LMS. LMS respects the 7 criteria we had. It is SaaS, open source, etc. And in order to have a platform with 4 profiles, we have developed 27 training videos, MOOC, and we will tell you how we designed them. We also produce 166 video sequences. A MOOC is not just a video. A MOOC is a training video that has scripts and activities that are complementary. MOOC is massive open online course. That's how we call them. So 1,162 minutes in average, which is about 20 hours of training. There are dozens of tests for evaluation at the end of each unit, but also at the end of each MOOC. And the approach we used. First, it is a participative approach. We work together, and in each phase, we work closely with all the stakeholders in order to remedy to the malfunction. Even in the negotiation phase, we had to choose between the type of MOOC. Is it an X MOOC or a C MOOC? So there is one that can be shared and connected, and its choice has to be justified, whether it is pedagogically or technologically. So the final choice for us was to use the XMOOC. Our approach for designing the MOOC is using the ADD with 2 phases, additional phases, one for planning and one for maintenance. We call that a PADIAM. The maintenance phase is very important because very often we had to update the MOOCs based on the content, based on the news that are involved in them. Sometimes we develop a MOOC, but after we look at it, we notice that the MOOC doesn't respect the competency referential, for example. or maybe the videos were not adequate. So this maintenance phase was very important. So the MOOCs are using an explicit approach based on the frequency of the tests. The structure is done as mentioned. We always worked with content experts and with the UNESCO and of course with the agency. We have linear design with a lot of back and forth because there are conditions for completion. There are many units, 3 for example, but in order to move from 1 minute to the second requires the validation of the first one through a test, through watching the videos, etc. The media that's used is respecting the universal design for learning principle, which means we propose a video with audio format or with text only and so on. There is a constraining sequencing, so there is we require a validation to move from one phase to another. So going from one unit to another, we need to pass a test, have a score, so that the other unit, so once you complete one unit, you have access to the second one. The platform also offers activities and additional resources and glossaries, and all resources are available for the user in order to strengthen their knowledge. The evaluation, like Mr. Khalid said, is done within the video in order to have interactive video, and these are tests with feedback that tells you whether you have the right or wrong answer. They complete the training. I try to go as fast as possible, especially talking about technology at the end of a meeting is not something that's really advised. Thank you, Mr. Fergouk, for respecting the time. You respected your 10 minutes, and now we give the floor to the audience. So I would like to give the floor to Madame Yasunaga, UNESCO specialist, who will do a presentation on innovative experiences at the international level. The floor is yours, Mrs. Mary.
Okay, good. So, well, أهلا بكم. مرحبا.
So, hello and thank you for giving us this opportunity.
تحاول أن تتحدث اللغة العربية.
Awalan, just let me start to congratulate you really on this great achievement. I think the government of Morocco has really done amazing work in the past decades. And today I've been really sort of educated, learn a lot from what you have done for IFMA. So today, as the last speaker, and so I would like to step back a little bit and then to revisit the concept of literacy, to reflect on how the concept is linked with different teaching learning approaches, and therefore training of educators, and as a basis for reflecting on the effective use of digital technologies and other technologies for professional development. So then I will show some examples of literacy programs related to these approaches, and which won the UNESCO Literacy International Literacy Prizes. So let me move to the next slide. So I think you already discussed a bit about the concept, but this is maybe just to give us some clarification. So as you can see that in the past decades, concept changed really a lot. So there's no universally agreed definition still now, but UNESCO offered these definitions, and earlier one is 1958. So by which that a person is considered literate if the person can read and write with some understanding, that short, simple sentence. And this is indeed the concept that sort of distinguished people, separate two people into two groups, one group people literate, and then another group illiterate. So when we hear the expression of like the eradicating illiteracy, this kind of expression is very much linked to this notion. And then in the 70s, the concept of functional literacy emerged, and I noticed that really the IFMA adapts this approach together with other things, but quite a bit of this approach. So the essence is really application of the skills. And then the current one, when we talk about the literacy as a continuum of reading, writing, and numeracy, this is really emerged in 2003 when an expert met to design a literacy assessment. So idea was really to have this continuum, the notion, but also elaborate a bit the ability of literacy. So identify, understand, interpret, communicate, and compute, etc. So, and then latest one that UNESCO offers is through the UNESCO recommendation adult learning education, and in that we still maintain this notion of continuum, but introduce that the ability to solve problems in increasingly technological and information-rich environment. So that means that also we are concerned with the digital text-mediated communication and expression. So, of course, this continuum calls for the lifelong learning, which has been already discussed quite intensively. And it's really great to hear that the government, Morocco, the institutes, are already sort of working, introducing the lifelong perspective in teacher training, but also in developing the institutes and so on. So that's really welcome. And I think, but this notion is still to be adapted in different places. So maybe I can share that the result of the 22 UNESCO survey on national policy program responses to COVID crisis to illustrate to what extent countries have adapted a lifelong learning perspective in national policies regarding ICT and education. So about 41% of 44 countries responded to the survey reported that their ICT and education policies integrate youth and adult literacy that helped, and then that the integration helped them to respond to the COVID crisis when the learning became abruptly to distance learning. And 14% of the country responded that saying that their ICT and education policy does not integrate youth and adult literacy. So for these countries, it was difficult to have the orientation when they had to shift to the distance learning. 90% of countries said no policy. 25% of countries still developing policies. So this is just to illustrate that how the world is moving to integrate this perspective. So now moving to the this. I hope this is not too detailed. I hope, but so this is just to illustrate 5 approaches. I mean, of course, there are many approaches to teaching and learning. I think we already discussed this today in a previous session. But here that I would like to highlight these 5 approaches that, and with the linked sort of understanding of literacy. So the first one is literacy as skills approach. So in this approach, the literacy is seen as a sort of skills, the technical sort of skills or ability, and independent, that can be learned really independent from the context. So, and then this approach typically is the one used in the schools. It's also sort of informed by the cognitive principles, and then uses the predetermined content. Rarely considers the context, and then also takes the competence-based approach. And then, of course, to teach, then use quite a bit the using the primers, and then teaching the educators on how to sort of teach the literacy skills. And then functional literacy, I think you already talked about it quite a bit, so I will not really go into details, but the idea is that this is also concerned with technical skills needed to engage in tasks. But the idea is really the application of the literacy skills, not just skills. So therefore, that has an implication for the curriculum and the pedagogical approaches. So it takes the task-oriented approaches, etc. And then social and anthropological approaches. So these approaches are very much sort of concerned with the context. So they particularly sort of promote literacy, focusing on the process and in a social cultural context. So it's really they promote literacy as a social practice. So, and then of course it also engage with the learners and the context and designing the programs, etc., etc. So it has the positive sort of aspect, which is really concerned with the specific needs and situation of the learners. When it comes to maybe teacher training, why the first and second approaches are relatively easy to manage, because the text could be sort of determined, but this one, if we really want to engage and then communicate and work with the learners, it requires really the specific technique and then approach it. So then extensive sort of another kind of training is needed. And then the last, I think, the literacy for transformation. This is the critical pedagogy. So really, sees literacy as a means for social transformation, critical reflection. So it's not just conforming the current framework, but really the idea is that really to emancipate or really change not only the learners, but also the environment. So I think as you all know, that Freudian approach is the representative of this. And of course, this involves lots of dialogue and co-creation and co-construction of the knowledge. And that's also therefore that similar to the social anthropological approaches. So, and then training could be also a bit complex. And then I think lastly, in addition to these 4, there are different indigenous approaches in different settings. For instance, I think in Canada, the First Nations, US, some of the programs use intergenerational learning approach, and then really using the storytelling as a method, and then really to collect also the knowledge and the language in the community, and so for the social cultural revitalization. So I would like to say that these are not really mutually exclusive approaches. So the reading and writing skills are really the central to literacy, but these skills are used to accomplish certain tasks. And then, so these tasks are embedded in our social cultural context. And then, of course, that literacy can be a means for transformation. So they are kind of all related, and one program can have different components or different emphasis, but it depends on what each one wants to achieve. So what I would like to do now is really to highlight very quickly, because I'm a bit concerned with the time, that the corresponding programs that won the literacy prizes. So the first one is the literacy as skills approach. So I'd like to introduce the South Africa's mass literacy campaign conducted, already finished, but they targeted 4.7 million adults to become literate and numerate, and then also to gain other life skills such as health, civic education, environment management, income generation. They adopted the integrated approach. So the approach that integrates the neurocognitive science, but also the whole world approach, etc. So it has a really strong cognitive dimension, but also took the multilingual approach. So they introduced 11 official languages, and then start with these languages that are more familiar to learners, and then introduce English at some point. And that worked quite well to attract also the learners. They mobilized 75,000 community-based volunteers, coordinators, supervisors, educators, and facilitators, and then trained, and including the blind and deaf educators. So that also made the program very inclusive. And then the community continuous training and mentoring support for facilitators on other teaching methods and classroom management and learner assessment profiles. And provision of the desk calendar included the lesson plans and teacher models. And then they also made a payment to the volunteers, volunteered teachers, the facilitators, but on an outcome based. So that was the program that done in South Africa. And I would like to really emphasize that actually, like Morocco, South Africa invested already the few decades to train the professionals. So they are very keen on professionalization of other educators, but also they introduced a national qualification framework, and that really sort of helped to make this program successful. So, which is a bit similar to what you are doing at the moment. Functional approaches. So this is the program from Spain. So Spanish as a second language for adult migrants. So this program aims to support migrants for their integration into society and labor market. So it has a sort of very functional aspect, and they combine Spanish language classes with activities of computing, citizen as right, civic knowledge, active citizenship, leisure activity, and cultural activity. So it was the very successful program and awarded the prize in 18. Just move to the next one. And then this is the social anthropological approach. So this is the program from Colombia. Sorry, yeah. Sorry. And so this one is this is very unique because they are providing the basic education, particularly literacy, to those who miss the primary education and then working in a construction site. So they are the workers in construction sites, and then they provided literacy learning in the construction sites, and then adapted the constructivist learning theory. So really connecting the learner's prior knowledge and what the program offers, and then situated in the learning in the environment, and then use the ICT also as part of the program, and then teachers had a pre-service and monthly in-service training, and training covered the various topics, so ethics, pedagogy, project management, health, and tech tools, in addition to literacy. And then the transformative approaches. So this is a program that from Sudan, and adopted the Freire's approach, and really to empower women, and then by also providing the livelihood skill for their empowerment. So they are really taking the participatory approach, including drama, role play, and visual aids. And then they provided also the pre-service and monthly training to facilitators in other education. So, but this is of course that involving all this drama, role plays, etc. So when we think about really designing how to sort of digitalize, it could be more complex, I suppose. And then I think just to maybe move to digitalization, I would just like to highlight very quickly that because my presentation has a strong focus on the digital component, but I just want to introduce that the key sort of messages coming out from the UNESCO's report published last year. One is the UNESCO Global Education Monitoring Report, which focuses on technology in education. And another one is the document, the publication called An EdTech Tragedy. So they are both report, the publication highlights the potential opportunities, and then also but also potential challenges. And I think, for instance, the capacity of the educators were highlighted today, but also this also was very much highlighted by this report. And then, of course, the important message is that we need to steer technology towards promoting literacy as a right, and not vice versa. And then this is maybe just very quickly. So this is the program that adapted the technology. An example from Costa Rica. Sorry. The information and communication technology in andragogical mediation program, and this aims at the increase the teachers' capacity and qualification in the use of ICTs, and institutionalize that program. So the practice of ICTs really use, as a part of the daily life of teachers' activities, and address needs of the marginalized population in the coastal rural communities. So they cover the basic literacy, numeracy, computer skills, and they created the training models for teachers based on need assessment, the surveys, and the pre-service and ongoing training on teachers on different related topics. And then also they created a certification for career development of learners. So these are the key messages. I think most of them I already mentioned, so I will not repeat. But I think for more examples, I put it at the end of the presentation. But for instance, UNESCO Literacy Prizes, we have a good compilation of practices from all over the world, which is always inspirational. And then as also UIL has an effective literacy practice database, which is a rich resources that documents all these practices. So thank you very much, and I stop here.
Merci, Madame Marie, pour votre intervention et je vous invite.
Thank you, Ms. Mary, for your intervention. I'd like to ask you to stay with us for the rest of the panel so that you answer the questions that might be addressed to you. Thank you. I open the floor for the audience. If you have any questions or more clarification about everything that has been presented, including the context of the contextualization of the IFMA Institute project in digital and using new technologies in literacy, in addition to the support assistance of CNIP to UNESCO and the Institute for the elaboration and development of the platform, as well as the follow-up approach. And finally, we have seen the presentation of Mrs. Marie, who presented international experiences in terms of literacy in different countries based essentially on the professionalization of the professions, training trainers, and using technologies. So the floor is open for any questions.
Oui, j'imagine. C'est bon, non? Monsieur.
Ah oui, pardon. Très bien, merci.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question of a general order to say that the platform that was developed with colleagues from CNIPS is a multi-dimensional, multi-use tool that can not only be used for trainings to skills of for literacy, but also for other things, and namely in order to bridge the gaps between what is being done in classrooms and the effort of the agency towards literacy and in developing literacy programs. So we can bridge the gap or link rather what is being done in IFMA and by the professionals. That platform can be used for these purposes. That was a comment. Thank you. Mr. Wadja, the floor is yours.
بانتباه وأشكر السادة.
I have listened carefully to all the interventions, all the clarifications. And I listened through translation to Mrs. Mary. I also listened to the challenges that Mr. Kharbouch mentioned in immobilizing the agency to fight illiteracy. And especially in terms of the response from those concerned and stakeholders. In the light of the quality of this initiative, in order to not face the same difficulties that Mr. Kharbouch talked about this morning, and so that we don't view the fight against illiteracy
في المجال ألا يكون من
wouldn't it be better to capitalize on the experiences, these positive and successful experiences in South of America, in Africa, and multiple other countries that reinforce that this can in fact succeed.
بالنسبة لجنوب أفريقيا تعدد اللغات.
despite the multiple languages, such as in South Africa, where there are more than 11 languages in one country. So my question is, how much are these experiences present in this project? Because this project has a social and a cultural dimension. Beneficiaries of these programs are, yes, in fact, limited to a certain degree, but once this person knows that people will, in fact, benefit from their knowledge, it would be motivating for this person to attend these training programs.
حياتي ونسميه باسم والسعادة على وجه الأرض، يعني نصيبنا من السعادة على وجه الأرض. هل
As human beings, we are happy to serve and happy to have a weight in society. I believe that all these efforts that have been done, and I commend all of the efforts and leadership proven in this program. But we should rely on sociological studies maybe based on some studies would help this project be more fruitful, more successful in the future.
لا بتقنيات ولا بمعارف ولا بتموقعات ولا يعني تأثير
in terms of its impact on the beneficiaries. And it might even speed up the process. Thank you so much for listening.
شكرا لكم. أعطي الكلمة.
I now give the mic to Mr. Shafiqi.
La journée avance.
Thank you very much. The day goes on and we have more and more appetite for digitalization. I'll try to create this link between what we've heard and listened to in the first panel with what we've listened to in the first panel. We, in the first panel, have seen that the pedagogical method adopted by the Institute, IFMA, is to analyze professional practices and develop professional skills, and based on that, build an evaluation referential and a referential of trainings, if I understood well. However, listening to the intervention of the second panel, I cannot but ask questions about the legitimacy of the content that we will have in the trainings of for literacy. It is true that analyzing professional practices gives a legitimacy to the functional approach. However, to this day, and according to what have been presented in the second panel, there is a second legitimacy that is not directly linked to the professional practices, but also linked to social practices of referentials. If I take a given citizen, illiterate or literate citizen, he or she is called every day to fill in on forms in different platforms. He or she's asked to use email addresses to receive information of any type. If you recall, during the earthquake of El House in Marrakesh, the assistance was delivered to the citizens through digital means, and for any administrative certificate or authorization, you need to go through a digital platform. So literacy should be also focusing on the use of technologies and fill in forms. A person who is going to be asked to fill in forms on a digital platform should at least have the basics to understand what a platform means, how a platform functions, knowing that in every neighborhood and in the old Medinas, cities of the parts of the cities, we have people given services to fill in these kind of forms, and this implies using very confidential, private, personal information of the person that he or she shares with the service provider to fill in a form on the platform. So if literacy tomorrow is regarded with the person of today, what can we do, or what should we do in this literacy, digitalization literacy, in order to have a citizen living in its era? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Shafri. I'll give the floor back to the panelists if they want to answer the questions that were addressed to them. One last intervention, please. Mr. Dukali, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I would like to draw your attention to the testimony of the representative of UNESCO and say that all these best practices and were recognized in Morocco since the start of reflections. Reflect as an approach is part of the referential of skills of the national agency. All the experiences that were showed is were part of the benchmarking of Morocco. Morocco is or has developed very greatly at this level. We have also a cooperation with different countries in this regard. So my question at the beginning that was about how to link IFMA's project with the with countering illiteracy, because countering literacy is the basics of lifelong learning or literacy for adults, trainers, and within IFMA we can shift from a in-person training that lasted back then when I was working on this project 6 days per year, but in IFMA it's a continuous training that comes meet two perspectives. The first one meeting an urgent need, which is training skillful people in and individuals and professionals in educating and teaching adults, and opening to cooperation as a second perspective, because Morocco is targeting much more opening education system to everyone and working on the lifelong learning. IFMA with other initiatives could be a platform for Morocco to develop education, and it's the basics of the sustainable development and it's part of the SDG 4. Thank you, Mr. Dokali. I'll give back the floor to the panelists so that they can answer the questions that were addressed to them, so that we can adjourn the session. I want to react vis-a-vis the concern of our colleague and Professor Mr. Shafiki. It goes without saying that having a training online on a platform on four different profiles would be a suicide attempt approach. We have developed a MOOC, a module for training that we entitled use integration of ICTs in pedagogical practices for 4 profiles. For the literacy educator, we have a module on using social media, on using and integrating social media in the sessions or pedagogical practices, and how, for example, they can do a spelling bee or spelling bee contest in WhatsApp app, for example, or correct pronunciation exercises through WhatsApp voice memos or messages. So there was a module on how to use the forums for discussions, how to have learners, how they can manage online learnings from different platforms. So we have not a modules, but a training to these 4 profiles on how to use technologies and technology tools in their classroom practices, and how they can train online on the platform, in addition to the guides and the tutorials that we have implemented and published. If I may, I would like to thank the speakers and panelists for their very relevant interventions, but I also want to thank them for being very patient, especially Mr. President of the Higher Council for Education. As an interaction with the intervention of Mr. Salah El-Wadi, I can only corroborate their the importance of research studies, especially for the deployment of IFMA, Institute for the Extension and Generalization of the Requirement of IFMA. Mr. Bougro and Boukhut have highlighted this process, and the implementation of IFMA is a research work, and in order to succeed in this project, it's a societal project, we need to have research-oriented works to be open to different instances of research to allow a collection of relevant data in order to succeed or to be successful in the implementation. It is also time to reflect on a surveillance system that allows opening to best practices, international best practices and new practices, so that we can capitalize and implement a collective intelligence that will help us save time, rationalize, and the principle on which IFMA is based is a principle of rationalization and capitalization of the personal effort of the human resources, but also capitalizing on material resources and saving times, so that we can implement a process of surveillance, so that we can increase the quality of the deployment of IFMA, especially during an extension phase. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mazouni. I would like to react on the question of Mr. Shafiqi, who brought more elements to the approach. In IFMA, we are developing an offer for a future literacy, and we all know that we are in a very fast-changing world, and we would like to say that in this the framework of MOOC that explains to the different users of the platform how to use the platform, and for that purpose, the agency with UNESCO and ULA and the World Alliance for Literacy, GAL, are developing a new project on the use of ICTs and the building capacities for trainers in terms of technology. So we are building the capacities in this field, and we also established a partnership with the ADD, the Digitalization Moroccan Agency, to use technologies in literacy project and be aligned with digital transformation worldwide. Mr. Fatah, would you like to add something? Yes, thank you very much. I would like to react on Mr. questions. The platform is a learning tool, learning, exchange, and evaluation tool, but it created a link between online and in-person trainings through the matter of using to train and tutors who will start in person with the actors of each profession, and then there is also a possibility to come in person to follow the training. So this platform is a bridge between in-person and online trainings.
وفي نفس الوقت جزء على سي شفيقي.
A partial response on Mr. Shafiqi. Starting from the practices of each profession, we find that the main characteristics of
مواصفة مهمة.
trainer is being very effective and very active socially. Some of the units that we find on the platform, as well as on in-class trainings, we find these socially active people who have higher chances at immobilizing multiple actors. This is the philosophy and our perspectives. And it is based on the professional practices that we witness on the field.
Posé par Monsieur Shafiqi, c'est très pertinent.
In addition to that, I think that the question asked by Mr. Shafiqi is very relevant, because if a literacy educator is using the platform, he or she becomes more familiar with the online trainings and therefore transmit this culture to the beneficiaries. In addition to what Miss Lassie has mentioned, we have already worked on the integration of modules of trainings in digital components in modules of IFMA Institute. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fattah. One more point that I would like to highlight is the targeted audience, and in order not to have the same problem with the targeted group and their reaction vis-a-vis the programs, this study has been done based on a diagnosis, thanks to the support of the European Union, to the strategy of Alpha 2. And by the end of Alpha 2, that was a diagnosis study that we have conducted in 4 regional regions in Morocco, in order to discern the needs and interest around the modules and the trainings. Focus groups were composed and conducted with the targeted groups, and we have discerned some of the needs during the development of the project, and during the phase of the pilot project of IFMA, we had feedback from the ones who participated to this positive, favorable experiments, meeting their needs. What we need to dig further in is certification and evaluation, as well as a diagnosis to precise every parcours of training, meeting the needs of the targeted group and meeting our needs in the institute. Regarding Mr. Dokeli's question, that was very relevant about lifelong learning. When we talk about lifelong learning, we are focusing on 3 aspects: the age, the space, and the association. And lifelong learning through an online training gives the possibility to learn anytime, anywhere, at any age, which is very important. And IFMA favor the complementarity between formal and non-formal and informal learning, which is very important in implementation of lifelong learning. Mrs. Murray, do you have any addition into?
Two things. So one is about the reaching out to the marginalized people. I think came out quite often during the discussion. And I think normally the marginalized people, they are facing multiple factors of marginalization, not only literacy, but also poverty, geographical location, disability, the gender. So when we have all this combination of the difficult, challenges, then the approaches to learning could be also more complex. So I think it's kind of sometimes inevitable that addressing the learning needs of these people could be also more, in terms of cost, more expensive. But I think it's not difficult to do. And so maybe for that particular population, we need a more tailored approach. The second point is that we are also saying, reflecting at UNESCO, what is the best approach to youth and adult literacy? It's very difficult sometimes to also to sell in the competing, the environment when, there are different areas that wants to also sort of get some space in their global agenda. But what we are saying these days is like literacy plus. So not only literacy, but we, as you are doing, connect literacy with skills development or citizenship education. And then, but of course, that means that we need a lot of expertise, and it's very difficult to expect one person to have all the expertise. So I think to hear that there's a question of how to use the existing resources. And then what I feel very much from you is that you have already a lot of sort of resources, the experts, and what you have done. I didn't mention, but the Moroccan program also won literacy prize in the past. So I think it's also a matter of how to bring all these existing resources together with maybe also the some inspiring experience from other countries. But I think always there are lots of things available. And even I mentioned the Costa Rica project, that for educating teachers for ICT skills. But I think they are hiring. They hire the university graduates ICT, but of course the one student, even if they are good technicians, but they don't, of course, know how to teach adults. So they had to also face these challenges, and then needed to address. So I think we cannot have one solution, but somehow think about how to combine different existing resources. So thank you.
Merci à vous, Madame Marie, pour
Thank you very much, Ms. Murray, for your intervention and the very important feedback. As mentioned earlier, IFMA is just starting. It's an evolving tool, an open tool that will take into account the range of the aspects that we have mentioned earlier, taking into account social, economic, aspects of the targeted audience. We have reached the end of this panel and session. I thank you very much for being very patient and for expressing an interest to this project, these discussions, as well as to this event, which was very fruitful. And I'm sure that we will work together again in order to improve the work of the Institute. And I'll give the floor back to Mr. Slassi to for the closing panel.
Bien, nous voilà rendus.
Once again, we've reached the end of this very interesting seminar. I hope that you appreciated every panel and panelist and the interventions and the quality of the presentations and the event. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Director General of the National Agency for the for Countering Illiteracy. Thank you, Mr. Slassi.
In the name of Allah, most merciful, most beneficial, at the end of this seminar, on behalf of myself and all the participants, I would like to pay gratitude to Mr. Habib al-Malki, the President of the Council, for the idea and the innovative seminar in collaboration with our agency. I would like to thank him for the organization and for the hospitality. I congratulate all the organizers for the success of the seminar. Within the same token, I would like to thank all the experts, the national and the international ones, for the quality of their interventions that has underscored the importance of the training center in the combating illiteracy in particular, and training as a whole as part of the Moroccan educational system. This institution, which is an important platform for training and can play a leading role in enhancing the position of the trainer in combating illiteracy as a way to combat illiteracy, as well as an elevator for learning long life. Ladies and gentlemen, the seminar, different activities included in the partnership with our agency and the High Council of Education, Training and Scientific Research, and will be as a launching point for more productive collaboration to come out with the national strategy to combat illiteracy and to advance the issues of training and education, with the logo is Learning for Life. Thank you for your attention.
Shukran. Merci. J'aimerais à mon tour donner effectivement un certain nombre de conclusions qui ont été élaborées à l'issue.
Couple of conclusions that were issued from this, concluded from this seminar. Very briefly, these are observations and recommendations that come summarizing this event. Obviously, thanks to a very important cooperation between the agency and the European Union, a technical support from the part of UNESCO and UIL, we were able to benefit from a national strategy for literacy by 2037 with a very concrete roadmap that favor the conditions to eradicate illiteracy. We have mentioned that eradications to 0% does not exist, but to a level of the most developed countries. For that, we have the means to build capacities and develop different devices. The most important and essential condition to that is to professionalize the professions of literacy. Talking about the professions of educators, trainers for literacy, and the managers of the trainees. All these elements are part of an instrument, which is the Non-Physical Institute for Literacy Skills Training. it is a strategic, new, innovative tool founded on pedagogies and focusing on learning skills leading to certifications. And in this vein, I would like to share with you the name that was given to this engineering. You've seen on one of the slides a butterfly shape, and we called it the butterfly model to say that this is a model and a product that was elaborated by Moroccan experts. Another anecdote: when we received the terms of references from UNESCO, we could have adopted another approach, but because we have a framework law that already offered a framework for the institute and that was matching completely the terms of references and helped us be aligned with the terms of references. Thank you to the ones who elaborated the law, framework law, and the referentials, and a big thank you to the Higher Council for Education Trainings and Scientific Research. This new pedagogy engineering opens the perspectives of the learners in order to be able to build a professional career based on a certification, which is a great level of incentives and application. The certification could be done in a progressive way during a formal, informal, non-formal way of learnings. Different interventions of the stakeholders who were part of the elaboration of the referentials, whether it is UNESCO, the European Union, recognize the importance and the quality of this tool that comes bridging a gap, and I use a term from Mrs. Bully, a tool that is duplicated. From the debate, we have a number of recommendations. The first one is the necessary transformation of the current national education system to a lifelong learning education system. So we need to adopt this transformation to be enabling counter illiteracy in Morocco possible, and Anectria recommends a strong governance that will favor flexibilities of learning pathways, especially the lifelong learning pathways. Second recommendation is to develop a certification system that IFMA lacks, and since we don't have a system for certification, we are not yet aligned with our objectives and important subjects, such as the one mentioned by Mr. Shafaki Fouad earlier, comes answer a question about the economic model, since we will be able to have an approach based on the micro-certification, exploring the pedagogical model developed by IFMA for all the education models, and generally speaking, all the professions, no matter what sector is, for example, artistic or healthcare sector, and so on and so forth. We would like to share the one other important recommendation, which is to capitalize on the already existing resources, experiences, and expertise that we have, and in this vein of surveillance and axed research approach in terms of functions or in terms of means, namely technological means that were mentioned in the last panels. And finally, the development the building capacities, building or reinforcing international cooperation. And finally, it is a recommendation from the Higher Council for Education and Trainings is to raise awareness, to launch awareness campaigns for the benefit of this approach adopted by IFMA to generalize it on other sectors. Thank you for listening.